What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle with a special announcement from Darkest Dungeon. Came out a couple hours ago on their Twitter page, but I guess the thing they tweeted yesterday on April 1st was in fact not a joke. They are going to do some DLC, which I am very surprised about. I didn't think we were going to be getting DLC before Darkest Dungeon 2. I just thought it was kind of like the full team is set on that, especially because they've been hiring more staff, but I guess they implemented a new thing, and it's coming out next month. So that's pretty cool. Darkest Dungeon PvP. You get to play your friends or play randoms. Like I said, we have no details yet. I will definitely report on them when we get those details. And if you just wanted to hear the announcement, there you go. But I'm going to spend the next couple minutes talking about like my ideas, my hopes, and some stuff that people in my Discord, which I'm shamelessly plugging, were in fact talking about. So the first idea comes from a user named Eve in my Discord, and they said that the gameplay would have to be rebalanced around PvP, and this makes a lot of sense because Darkest Dungeon at its core is based around the player fighting monsters. The monsters have much different stat pools than the player characters. Oftentimes the monsters have substantial amounts more of HP in terms of like their frontliners, and they have like double space enemies. There are some comparable things like the chance to resist things. For PvP, balance would likely have to be redesigned because otherwise some things are going to get out of hand very quickly. For instance, if you can use certain items like quick draw charms, you're going to have plague doctors being a complete menace with their 17 speed turn 1 kind of thing, and it's basically going to either devolve into dice rolling of which plague doctor goes first, or having a team that is set up to specifically counter plague doctors and makes this weird rock paper scissors kind of meta. But otherwise, I would expect some of the totals and the percentages and such to be changed a little bit. For instance, the leper swinging his 25 damage sword into the front line. Second point comes from a user named the Bozozo, and I love this idea. This is kind of like hoping for a dream kind of thing, the straight hopium, as I heard someone say online earlier this morning. But it is that it doesn't make too much sense for Red Hook to be making a multiplayer DLC unless they were considering multiplayer for Darkest Dungeon 2, because this could be the trial run, kind of the unofficial beta of seeing how their matchmaking and stuff like that works for multiplayer, which if we get PvP now, no reason not to expect it in Darkest Dungeon 2, and if they already have multiplayer set up, no reason not to have either the base game by Red Hook where they include multiplayer, which would be really fun to have like co-op in Darkest Dungeon. I think that'd be really sick. I don't know how you would do it. Just as I'm thinking about it right now, the idea just came to me, but if you have co-op in a game like that, you can, for instance, have quote-unquote raids where you could have a dungeon that has like 4 entrances and you have teams that go through and they try and get to the center. It could be competitive. It could be a race to the center to see who gets loot. It could be cooperative where all 4 teams get to the end and then they fight some super monster. That would be pretty sick. But a lot of exploration to be done in Darkest Dungeon multiplayer, which I didn't like. The game is amazing as a single player game, and I never considered the possibility of multiplayer. It's always been kind of like, oh, that'd be cool if they did it, but it's like, how would they do it? How would they implement it? And on the off chance that Red Hook doesn't really push the multiplayer in something like Darkest Dungeon 2, I'm hoping that the coding has enough openings for the modders, the big modding community, to do something with it, because even if Red Hook doesn't do something first party, there are a lot of talented modders out there that I'm sure would do something amazing with multiplayer if they had access to it. So this is just a really cool thing for Darkest Dungeon, but then also this is opening doors or going down avenues that were not originally conceivable in Darkest Dungeon. And so there's a lot of untapped potential now that they just put on the table. It's like they had their one, keg of ale, so to speak, and they were just drawing from that. It's like, man, this ale is really good. And they're like, well, check out this other one that we made. And they're opening that right now. So really exciting stuff. And now let's talk about what PvP might actually look like. So the first things I was immediately thinking of when I heard PvP was that plague doctors are going to be terrifying. So I don't know what the balance is going to look like, but plague doctors and stunning in general is very powerful in Darkest Dungeon. Turn denial is one of the best ways to win in the base game, so it is easy to understand that denying turns to other players is going to be very strong. And in the base game, there aren't too many trinkets that resist stuns. So either Red Hook is going to have to make specific PvP trinkets, which would be very cool, or let you pick specific quirks like Hard Noggin and stuff like that, so that way you can not get completely decimated by stuns. Otherwise, we're going to probably see powerful base game teams like multiple stunning be dominant in PvP. So you can see Hellion and Plague Doctor on the same team a lot. Plague Doctor gets to double stun your back, and then the Hellion gets to double stun your front, and then the other two characters just start tearing into the rest of your team, and then you're already behind, and having to catch up in Darkest Dungeon is very, very difficult usually, and the reason being that the catch-up tools like healing and stuff like that are usually not as powerful as the damage abilities themselves. Like, for instance, the Crusader's hitting 10 to 19 damage baseline, and your Vestal's healing 8 to 9 baseline with Divine Grace. So, or Comfort, whichever one's the single heal. You know what I'm saying, though. So, healing moves are usually farther behind damage moves, which means I don't know if Vestals are going to be completely required. We'll see what happens there. It'll be interesting to see. But stunning and high speed can be really difficult to balance around, or it can be very dominant when things are starting out. And a lot of the games may relegate to dice rolling between your Plague Doctor and theirs, who got the stun off first. Otherwise, I think certain things like Mark comps may not be that powerful because the same reason. My phone just went off. As I was saying, Mark gets disrupted pretty easily, so if it goes off, it's going to be terrifying. Like, if you bring in an Arbalest and they have a stun, they're either going to be trying to stun your marker, or they're going to be trying to disrupt your Arbalest. Definitely be ready for that if you want to run a Mark team, but, you know, it's like one of those things where if the Mark gets to go off, I'm pretty sure that someone is screwed at that point. But that also begs the question, what's going to happen with Deathblow? Is it still going to be the same 2 and 3 chance? Are there going to be Martyr Seals, Unyielding, or are characters just going to straight die when they get to 0? Because that's going to be crazy. Because then all those leper enthusiasts that try and drag me in the comments are going to have their day in the sun. Because Leper's going to be swinging that giant sword into the front line. And even though your frontliner's usually pretty beefy, right? You got your own Leper, you got your Crusader, Man-at-Arms at 60 hit points about, respectively. Hellion near 50. Shieldbreaker can get up to like 50 with her armor and stuff like that. Or around 50, I think. But either way, you're going to be seeing Leper actually potentially, a lot of LY ending words right there, but you're going to be seeing Leper potentially being a very terrifying force because player characters don't have that much access to protection, like raw protection percentage, outside of things like Man-at-Arm Guard, and then I think Bulwark of Faith, and I want to say the Leper also has a protection move, Withstand. So the frontline meta will be pretty interesting because you're going to have your frontline players, if the enemy's using Lepers, it's like, think about it like this. The Leper is faster than the Crusader, surprisingly, by 1 speed. Almost as fast as the Man-at-Arms behind by 1 speed, and only 2 speed behind the Hellion. So you could see things like this weird frontline meta where you're going, okay, I need to protect myself against these Lepers, right? Because they're just going to chew through my low dodge frontline. What if the enemy Lepers have the Berserk Mask, so they get +3 speed, you know? And so you don't even potentially win the speed tie on turn 1. The Leper's just going to go first, and both Lepers are going to chop the same person. One of them's probably going to crit, and you're going to be at like 20 hit points on your Crusader, and then you hit Bulwark of Faith for 30 prop, but you're pretty much dead at that point anyway, so it'll be pretty interesting. We may see weird things like I said, double Leper, Jester, and like Healer or something like that, where you just have the Jester doing guitar solos for Battle Ballad, and then both Lepers on turn 1 might go first in terms of the frontline race, and then on turn 2, they're definitely going first. So you're going to have Lepers with no accuracy problems, high speed, and high crit, chewing through your front line very quickly. So it's going to be incumbent on the player to really try and disrupt stuff. And there are going to be so many interesting strategies out there that you can employ that you cannot directly counter easily. I'm sure someone's going to figure out how to like cover 80% of options. Like there's a team out there, I'm sure, that does that. It'll definitely be interesting to see the creative stuff people come up with. I actually have a really interesting team idea. I don't want to say yet. I want to see what's allowed, you know, what the game mode allows before I get into that, but otherwise, this is all exciting stuff. I could talk for probably another hour about what I hope to see or what I think could work and stuff like that, but when we see more information, then I think I will do a I will do a follow-up video going over it, and I will also be discussing some theory crafting stuff and see what works. And I'm not big on PvP personally, but I think this will be pretty fun, so I'll be playing it, and I will definitely be looking to organize some viewer games. Potentially, I'll have like a little queue in Discord most likely, and maybe we'll do some community tournaments. I don't know, it depends how good it is, depends how many people are playing it, but it's going to be fun. It's an exciting time for Darkest Dungeon. I hope you all check it out and come back and look at my videos when I decide to check it out also. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.